Hello and welcome, wherever you may be and however you may be listening. This is the Racing with Rob and Roller podcast. I'm Josh Roller, located in Charlotte, North Carolina, where we didn't get an April snow this previous week, unlike the other half of this podcast, Rob Peeters, who did get some of that white fluffy stuff from the sky above in Indianapolis. This is episode 87, and if we were to choose paint schemes for our featured paint scheme segment based off of a car number, Joe Nemechek's Burger King paint scheme for the 1990s would easily be a favorite.
You mean my all-time favorite paint scheme of all time?
Did not know that. See, I'm learning things. We always are learning.
As soon as I bought a die-cast of that, I thought my life was complete. But I said that when I was 13, and I don't think that's true anymore. But I digress.
Well, we have a lot to talk about, Rob and I do, about Talladega, St. Petersburg. A scary crash in the ARCA Menards series has really kind of gone underreported or under-talked about, but Rob and I will touch on it here. Don't you worry, Mother Nature created a first-time winner in the Xfinity Series. We also had another blowover that has restarted debate, and Andretti Autosport is back in victory lane for the first time since Alexander Rossi won at Road America in June 2019. It's been a long time for that organization. So without further ado, I say let's get this show going. Let's kick it off. Rob, take over for Rob's Racing Report.
Hey, everybody. It's time for Rob's Racing Report, and that's basically where I tell you all the news. I get to read all of the news at you. So I'm going to start off today with Formula One. We got some big news here over the course of the weekend. It was announced that the Japanese Grand Prix will remain at Suzuka through 2024. Great news. Suzuka, always a great track to go to, always fun because everybody likes Suzuka. It's a tough track. It's a treacherous track. It's one of my favorite tracks too because it's one of the only tracks that I know of right now that major racing series go to that has an overpass, and I love that about that. I think that's really cool and unique. I like that. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I've always liked that about Suzuka, so I'm glad to see it will be remaining as a Formula One event. But there is some Formula One event news that we should probably talk about, and of course, it's here in America. Further troubles for Circuit of the Americas came to light for many this week when the Fort Worth Star Telegram published that the money COTA and Formula One receives from the state of Texas via the Texas Major Events Reimbursement Program every year, which is approximately $25 million. I did not just burp during that. I'm sorry. Has a stipulation, and there's a stipulation here in this agreement that COTA must be the only Formula One race in the United States in its current contract that expires at the end of the season. So we'll have to see what kind of contract renegotiations take place if they can get that same amount of money to continue to host F1 here in the United States. With Miami being confirmed for a race next year, it's probably very concerning for Circuit of the Americas, but again, they do have a NASCAR race to look forward to that could potentially help them a lot. Now, and when we saw these kinds of contracts exist, Texas actually had this exclusivity contract. They had to be the only major event, IndyCar event, within a certain amount of distance, within a certain distance, and that ended up getting kind of changed so that Circuit of the Americas could actually be on the IndyCar schedule for 2019. It will be interesting to see if something can be made so that they can still receive that kind of money despite the fact that there'll be other races in the United States. Kind of disappointing that Formula One has kind of thrown COTA under the bus and kind of forced them to renegotiate that contract, but maybe it'll work out. I try to be positive, but knowing COTA's financial situation, I'm not as positive as I should be. But moving on from Formula One here.
You're forgetting one thing. The sprint race.
Oh shoot! I didn't even put that in. We talked about it, and I didn't put it in. I forgot about that. Racer.com and everybody else, Formula One. I don't know why I said Racer, but I read it on Racer first. But Formula One has officially confirmed that sprint races will be a thing this year. So they have essentially said, oh, that's why I said it. I wrote it under Formula E instead of Formula One. That's why I'm stupid. So sprint races are coming. Sprint races are coming to the 2021 Formula One season. They're coming this season at the very earliest. And we are probably going to look at them. These are the three places that have been named: Silverstone, Monza, and maybe Interlagos. maybe Interlagos. So we could see them at Silverstone, Monza, and Interlagos. So the way that this is going to work is basically you're going to have practice on Friday, and then you're going to have qualifying on Saturday, and then a sprint race to essentially determine the actual lineup of the Grand Prix that will be on Sunday. So you're going to qualify for this, how you line up for the sprint race. So someone akin this almost to a NASCAR stage, like a giant 2-day stage, which I guess you could say it kind of is, but it's definitely going to be interesting. I'm not going to pass any judgments on it yet. I am very interested to see how this goes first before I pass any judgment on it. Because, sprint races are fun to watch in Formula 2 and in Formula 3. They're fun to watch in other series. So maybe a qualifying sprint race will be fun. I don't know. Qualifying races are fun. We see how fun they could be in NASCAR. But then again, those are on restrictor plate tracks, which are always fun regardless. And we're going to get to that in a little bit. So we'll see. We'll see. Now we can move on to Formula E because I am now on the right track here. The remainder of the 2020 to 2021 Formula E calendar has been set. Following the May 8th race on the streets of Monaco, Formula E will travel to Mexico's Autodromo Miguel E. Abed on June 19th and 20th. Then Brooklyn, New York on July 10th and 11th for the New York City E-Prix, followed by London on July 24th and July 25th. Finally going to that London street circuit that we were supposed to go in, that's going to be like a weird hybrid of indoor and outdoor, which I'm still excited for, before concluding the season in Berlin at the Tempelhof Airport August 14th and 15th. So that now means the Chinese, French, Chilean, and South Korean E-Prix have all been canceled. So that is the Formula E news. Not all the Formula E news we're going to talk about, because if you watch the Formula E races at 7:30 in the morning on CBS Sports Network this past weekend, you'll know that there's some stuff to talk about. But before we get into that, let's talk about some IndyCar news here. NBC first reported that Will Power is now off the open driver market as he has signed a new multi-season contract with Penske. Team Penske Racer now reports that IndyCar president Jay Fry says IndyCar is exploring options of adding more ovals to the 2022 NTT IndyCar Series schedule. Racer has also learned that Homestead Miami Speedway has expressed interest in hosting a race as well as the season opening training center. Fry did name drop Iowa and Richmond in quotes for the article, but it didn't seem like those guys were leading candidates. The article read, it seems like Jay Fry doesn't really know what's going on with Iowa. I think he'd like IndyCar to return to Iowa. I think a lot of people would. I would. I think Iowa puts on a good, fun show, especially when it's under the lights. Don't race at Iowa during the day. I really think we have enough evidence that says that's a terrible decision for the racing quality. You always get better racing when Iowa's at night, especially at IndyCar. But that will be interesting because, Homestead, I've been a big fan of Homestead. IndyCar at Homestead is really fun, really good, really fast. I think it would be a really cool place to go to, especially with this year's IndyCar. I think the new Universal Aero Kit can produce some good racing on an oval if it gets on the right track. And I think Homestead is that right track. We've seen what it can do at Indianapolis. And Indianapolis, don't get me wrong, it's a great track. Of course, they're going to have a good race at Indianapolis. But because Texas ruined itself, and again, I don't like to bash Texas as much because I do like Eddie Gossage. But, dude, you got to fix turns 1 and 2 of your track. Got to make them like 3 and 4 again. Erasing the PJ1 there is not going to fix it like you think it will. You seriously have to just change the turns back to the way they were. I don't know how easy that is to do, but something needs to be done because it has really affected the racing quality of IndyCar at Texas, which honestly should not have suffered that much. I mean, IndyCar at Texas has always been a fantastic show, and it's really disappointing to see that it's not anymore. It's not a staple race that I used to look forward to every year. It's disappointing, but I'd love to see Homestead return. Of course, I'm going to always say go to Michigan, you cowards, because there's really no reason not to be at this point. Literally, again, and I'll say it again, if you cancel Toronto and don't go to Michigan, it will be the greatest disservice. I understand you're probably going to end up going to a doubleheader somewhere in Mid-Ohio or something like that, but for the love of all that is good, the good people of Michigan need a better track and a better race than whatever the crap Detroit puts on, because that race has never been memorable outside of when a crazy upset winner wins it. I do not remember a single event at Belle Isle that has been memorable in my mind since that weird race that Carlos Huertas won by rain because it rained out, or that time Carlos Munoz got his first win there because it was rain. I mean, yes, these are memorable winners, but the races were not memorable. The only reason I remember the winners is because the races ended under caution because of a rain. Outside of that, I think I remember Bourdais winning a couple of times. That was cool. But I really don't remember a race at Detroit ever. Like, I just don't. And this is going back to since they first started racing there in 2007. I really, truthfully don't remember a memorable race at Belle Isle Park. But that's just my opinion. That's why I firmly believe the good people of Michigan deserve a better race on the schedule. But I know Roger Penske's not going to give up that Detroit race for anything. He's just not going to do it because that's his pride and joy now is putting that race on. Of course, it should be putting the Indy 500 on, which he does put on, but I don't know. And we got news about how the Indy 500 is going to be run because, last year it was really disappointing running the race with no fans, which I called them doing a long time ago, but it was still disappointing when they ended up doing it then. But the Indianapolis Motor Speedway will have a 40% capacity, or 135,000 people will be allowed for this year's edition of the Indianapolis 500. Now, temperature checks are going to be required. You're going to have to wear a mask. You have to be vaccinated in order to get into the garage. So you're going to have a lot of safety protocols going in. But this should be the largest sporting event that happens in front of fans since the COVID-19 shutdown.
Yeah.
That happened a little over a year ago. So it will be interesting to see how that goes. I mean, IMS, again, keep in mind the sheer size of IMS compared to pretty much every other sporting event out there.
Yeah, you can't. It's tough to comprehend unless you've been there. That's one thing that is a common theme. I've been there when there's been no one there. I went there for an IndyCar deal with Scott Dixon, and there was 30 people there at the track. It's a huge complex.
Yeah, literally.
It's huge.
I mean, you could go there during a test, and the turn 2 viewing mounds are still going to be packed, and it's not even going to feel like you're still going to be amazed by the sheer sheer quantitative mass of this area. So I really feel like it can be doable, especially with 40%. I mean, you're looking at like a little over a Brickyard crowd with 40%.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think the Brickyard typically sells 100,000 or less now, because the standard, and that's not terrible, because the reason why is actually comparative. If the Brickyard could sell 100,000 tickets, that's actually pretty good, because most other NASCAR races sell about half that, like 50,000 to 80,000 tickets.
Well, even at 100,000, only Bristol can hold more.
Right. So,
that's a lie. That's a lie. I mean, Daytona's got 100 and some thousand permanent seats.
Yeah, but they don't have. No track has as many seats as Indianapolis, because no track is ever going to see Indianapolis 500 style crowds.
You're going to have three on race day, on a typical race day without COVID. There's 350,000 people there,
and there's a reason why I trust IMS on this, and I don't want to get too far off topic, but Josh, we talked about this before the show, and I'll tell people this right now. I got my COVID vaccine, got my Johnson & Johnson vaccine over the weekend on Saturday, and I got it at IMS. And I got to tell you, I was telling Josh this, and I tell all of you nice viewers here too, it was the quickest, easiest, most seamless thing ever. I pulled in, Yellow Shirts directed me, I followed cones all the way, and I got checked in. And then I pulled in and I pulled around, and they literally had us get our vaccine in the old Formula One garages, which, by the way, is still the coolest thing in the world, to pull your car out of one of those Formula One garages and know that what I just did is something that Michael Schumacher, Juan Pablo Montoya, Mika Hakkinen, Lewis Hamilton, Sebastian Vettel, all these people did that exact same thing at this racetrack. Fernando Alonso has done it in multiple different ways. But I am amazed by that. It was cool at that, but literally it was so quick, so easy. That's why I think IMS is going to be able to pull this off. I have no doubt in my mind that they will be able to pull off a 40% crowd. And if that's the amount of people that they feel like are probably going to come back, then that's great. Of course, keep in mind there's going to be no concerts this year. There's going to be basically no infield activity whatsoever, which is, again, probably the smartest thing to do. So Carb Day is pretty much going to be pointless to go to this year. There's no Freedom 100. There's no concerts. You're pretty much just going to get out of there by like 2:00. If you stay, if I don't know if they're going to have the pit stop competition. I assume they will. But it will be interesting to see how many people even show up for Carb Day compared to years past, because right now it's not worth $30. I'm sorry. A 1 hour 1 hour practice session and a pit stop competition is not worth $30. It's not worth it anymore. I'm being straight honest. I mean, Penske absolutely killed Carb Day. I mean, obviously, it's not his fault that you can't have concerts. I understand that. I wouldn't want concerts to happen during COVID anyway. But, dude, the fact that we can't even put on the Freedom 100 is ridiculous. And I talked about this with my dad. It's still silly. I'm still pretty sure we're supposed to have the full road to Indy here in the next couple of weeks at the GP. And that's totally fine. You can have that all the entire road to Indy paddock in the infield paddock, and not have a concern. But you don't let the Indy Lights guys out there because you want to quote unquote keep as many people home as possible. You don't want to have any unnecessary people in the garage area. But again, the whole road to Indy, including Indy Lights, is going to be there in the next couple of weeks. Doesn't make sense. Doesn't make sense to me. I hate that. All right, I know I'm talking a lot. So, last piece here on IndyCar. Speaking of the Indianapolis 500, how about we talked about this guy? Rick Ware has told the AP that son Cody Ware will need sponsorship if he is to attempt this year's 500. So Cody Ware's got to pull up some sponsorship because his dad's can't buy him a charter, basically. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I like Cody, but that you got to admit, come on, that was a good joke. Moving on here into NASCAR. Hey, this is pretty cool. Netflix is working on a documentary that will center around Bubba Wallace and 2311 Racing's first season, and will include Wallace's advocacy for diversity, equality, and inclusion in NASCAR. Now, seriously, Bubba, dude, the hate he's getting for this is ridiculous. Bob Levine, I don't know what the hell he's doing on Twitter right now. I think this guy's off his rocker on Twitter. I don't know what the hell he's doing. It doesn't make any sense to me. He's mad at Bubba or something. I don't know what Bubba did to him, if he looked at him the wrong way one day or what. But the man is out here pushing conspiracy theories with fans on why Bubba's getting his attention. It's like, dude,
is it not obvious? I mean, is it not obvious?
He's the biggest name in NASCAR right now. I'm sorry, Josh. I know you like it, but let's be honest. People like Chase Elliott have the personality of a wet dishcloth. We like him as drivers. We like him as heroes and stuff. We like to watch him race on Sunday. But for the love of God, I would not watch a documentary about Chase Elliott. I agree on the face of the planet.
I mean, I can't 100% disagree with that. But I mean, the reason Bubba's getting this attention is all right, yeah, he's the only African American driver, full-time driver, period, in a national division in NASCAR, and his co-owner is Michael freaking Jordan. Yeah. Okay, all right, it's just the way it is, and I don't see if anyone wanted to do a documentary on any driver, we should be applauding this. We've been asking about this. I mean, yeah, it's not the full series of a full field of teams and drivers, but it is a step in the right direction. For NASCAR and its audience expansion.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is a good way to do it, to prove that, it's just like the world. Not everything's perfect, but, there are people of color. There are women in different religions in NASCAR. And I've sort of been critical about not everyone. We always concentrate on the drivers. We need to concentrate more on the people behind the scenes as well. And hopefully that this documentary shows that, and it's not just 100% Bubba in 2311.
Well, yeah, and again, I want to reiterate to that too. Is again, Bubba is right now the most recognizable name in NASCAR. And if you want to criticize and say it's all about because of race and stuff, well, I mean, first of all, here's the problem: is like I said, most of the other top talent in NASCAR either is not interesting enough or is just flat out not going to be a good subject for this. I mean, yeah, you could do it on Kyle Busch, but Kyle Busch already does this. He already has videos of him working with Brexton when Brexton is racing. Samantha is very, very involved in Twitter. If you want to know about the Bushes, follow him on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Problem solved. If you want to know about Bubba Wallace, well, you could follow him, but you're not going to get as in-depth as you would probably get with those guys. Right. And I say that, again, too, is because when you have a casual fan browsing through Netflix, if they see Bubba Wallace, they're going to be like, oh, I know him. That's interesting. I might see that. Oh, Michael Jordan. I know him. That's interesting. I might click on this. Basketball fans, racing fans, sports fans in general, you have more. Whereas then but then you could conversely say, this is like, again, I go back to Chase Elliott. Who the heck is going to watch a documentary on Chase Elliott outside of a NASCAR fan? Nobody cares about Chase Elliott outside of NASCAR fans because he's not as big of a star as I think NASCAR fans think he is in their mind. I'm not saying this is like Chase Elliott. I'm not saying that Chase Elliott is a bad driver. I'm not saying that he has a bad personality. I'm not saying any of that. But Bill Elliott was very popular in Georgia. Chase Elliott is very popular in Georgia. Dale Earnhardt was popular everywhere. No. Dale Earnhardt Jr., ergo, was popular everywhere.
No.
There's significant differences. I mean, I'm not taking away anything from any of the drivers I just named contributions to racing. I'm not saying that. I'm saying if you look at popularity, you can go ask a casual fan or even a non-NASCAR fan entirely, somebody who's never touched NASCAR before, only knows it from pop culture. I guarantee you they know who Dale Earnhardt and Bubba Wallace are, and they don't probably know who Chase and Bill Elliott are. I know we know who they are, and we probably think it's sacrilege that they don't know it, but that's just how it is. So, and I know I'm picking on Chase Elliott. I shouldn't pick on Chase Elliott. I just did that because I read a lot of comments and tweets about people saying, oh, why don't they make one about Chase Elliott? He was actually voted most popular driver. Yeah, voted most popular driver by NASCAR fans, though.
Yeah.
Not by casual fans.
I think it's also important that, that's a great talking point also, that there's not enough outside promotion of NASCAR like there used to be. But, what this also does is it's a double connection. Hey, you watch Formula One Drive to Survive. Maybe you'd be interested in watching whatever this documentary is going to be titled. You watch The Last Dance, which is on Netflix. Maybe you'd be interested in watching this because guess who's also connected? That's
a very good point. The algorithm could work in NASCAR's favor.
Yep.
So, all of that is interesting. And this isn't noted here, but I wanted to add this piece of news because Adam Stern tweeted it out and it was really interesting. And he tweeted that Hailie Deegan is actually making a lot of money by marketing herself and making a lot of money, but the sponsors that she's marketing to don't want to sponsor her car or at all. They don't want any part of putting their corporate logos on her race suit or on her race truck. And I thought to myself, I said, that's really interesting because I feel like that changes how a driver might have to fund themselves. And I feel like that could be almost a bit of foreshadowing for what we could see in the future, where, these companies, they say, well, we don't get, especially with someone like Bubba Wallace, yeah, he's very lucky that DoorDash wants to be on the race car, that Columbia wants to be on the race car, that Dr. Pepper wants to be on the race car. Like, he's super lucky on those, and Root wants to be on the race car. But I'm sure there's a lot of other companies that probably would just love him to do social media posts for him. And I'm not so sure he's willing to do that. Hailie Deegan, probably all in on that because that's her brand. I don't think that's Bubba Wallace's brand. And so I look at those two things. I think they're kind of interconnected here because we talk about promotion. And Adam Stern mentioned, I think Hailie Deegan was like the 7th most successful or most recognizable female athlete in the world, or something, according to Forbes. I think that's what he tweeted. And I look at that and I say, this could be a real changing tide of just how we need to market NASCAR drivers and how we need to market the sport as a whole. I mean,
we've mentioned that before on this podcast. I've said before, like, Haley Deegan needs to put on a class for every driver out there. And if I'm a driver, whether I'm Kevin Harvick or if I'm a youngster coming up, like, insert any youngster out there, Carson Hocevar, I need to look at what Haley Deegan's doing, and I need to find a way to replicate it. Because, they may not want to sponsor you, but you can take just say you make 50 grand and your sponsor's like, I'm in for 200,000. Okay, well, here's another 50 grand. We can put you on your car and I'll fund the other 50 grand, of that. All right, boom, sponsors on your car. They, like you said, we're kind of getting off topic there, but that's a really great point to bring up there, that, just another point that how the world is changing about how I don't think only, especially motor racing, but just athletes in general will have to market themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Sports business is changing before our eyes, and we're going to have to see it here. So 2 drivers have switched their series points declarations this week. So Brett Moffitt has switched from the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series to the Xfinity Series points, because I think he's probably a little bit happier running with Al Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. I think that was probably how it was going to go, and I think he's got more opportunities there. So, and then he will continue to drive the number 45 for Nice Motorsports, except at the 3 Triple Truck Challenge events, which is he's no longer eligible for. And then Joey Case, I guess we're talking about Joey Case, surprisingly. That never happens in normal time. Has switched his points declaration from the Cup Series to the Xfinity Series. This was primarily done as he will be driving a Davey Allison tribute scheme in the Xfinity Series race at Talladega, which is a Dash for Cash race. And since he was earning Cup Series points, that made him ineligible to run. But he ended up running a Davey Allison tribute scheme in the Cup Series anyway. He finished.
He did both,
last or whatever. He also ran in both races. So I talk about Joey Gase because I complain about Joey. He's one of those guys. I'm not saying he's talentless. I think Joey Gase, I've never had anybody bring up like Joey Gase is in the way or he doesn't make any erroneous mistakes, but I've always wondered, like, why is this guy out here if he's never attempted to get a better ride than what he's in? Like, it seems like he's perennially with the worst teams he can find. Like, this guy would drive for Obica if they came calling, probably. They wouldn't have a car or an engine, but they would, if they came calling, Joey Gase would be like, sure, I'll be there. How low can I go? I don't know. It's crazy. Sorry, Joey, if you're listening to this. I know you're not, but no hard feelings. This is just my banter and my opinion. Don't take it personally, I promise. Corey Heim, this week's ARCA Menards Series winner at Talladega, spoiler alert, will make his Truck Series debut with Kyle Busch Motorsports at Darlington on May 7th. And finally here, Matt Mills, a driver for BJ McLeod Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, will make his Cup Series debut for BJ McLeod Motorsports. This is not a second car, but he's just going to be driving, as I guess, the 78 renumbered to 55.
No, he's not. That's not.
No, he's not. It's just the second entry.
No, it's not. Yeah, that's why it's
what
not.
What the heck is this? I don't understand. Explain this.
It is for BJ McLeod Motorsports. It is not a second car for Live Fast Motorsports. So the 78 will still be in the race.
Okay, so he's entering it under BJ McLeod, not the Matt Tifft BJ McLeod team.
Right.
Just BJ's own. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense. I was kind of surprised, but I was sitting there for a minute. I was like, so BJ's got 2 teams. He's got his main bread and butter, I guess, is his Xfinity team, and then he's got the team with Matt Tifft.
Yeah.
Hey man, I got nothing bad to say about BJ. This guy is a hard worker, and he's never in the way, and he's a respectful dude. So I'm not going to fault him.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but let's just throw out 2 before we move on. Bob Pockers did tweet today that practice and qualifying can be expected to come back if most, if not all, races in 2022, which is a good sign because we need it. Practice and qualifying makes your tickets worth more while, makes it easier to sell tickets for tracks, makes your weekend more full, especially for campers. So there you go.
100% agree. And that's that for Rob's Racing Report. So I think since Josh is leading today, this week, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to him, and we're going to talk about our featured paint scheme.
Yeah, the 2013 IndyCar Series. And just to speed things up, Rob, I'm literally going to throw it back to you because I'm leading. You get to go first here.
Well, that's fine because my pick is one of my personal favorite cars that I think gets no love whatsoever. And this is James Jakes' number 16 Acorn Stairlifts Honda that he drove for Ray Hall Letterman Lanigan Race. The reason why I love this car so much is the colors are just outstanding. I love this maroon, the black, the silver. All of it is just so beautiful. And Ray Hall Letterman in 2013, had gorgeous cars. I mean, it was hard to pick just one. I think Mike Conway ran a one-off blue e-cigarettes car, which was, believe me, beautiful in and of itself. And it always had me wondering at that point. I was like, I remember when I first saw that, I was like, man, do you think we could see e-cigarettes come back into motorsports and pump money into them just like tobacco did? That has not happened. I mean, e-cigarettes have sponsored race teams, but not as much as I expected them to. I think McLaren has the deal with Views,
Yeah,
which is an e-cigarette, and then I think that's it because I remember they had. Well, then obviously Mission Win now with Ferrari, but I don't think that's not an e-cigarette brand. Which is interesting. I always thought that was. I really honestly thought at that time when I saw that blue e-cigarettes scheme that Mike Conway. First of all, I fell in love with it because it just looked beautiful. It is cute. It looked beautiful, but I really just wondered that it didn't end up happening. I thought it would for a little bit when Bourdais was sponsored by Mystic for so long. I thought that was going to happen, but then that didn't happen because that sponsorship went away. I think what ended up happening was they amended the master settlement agreement or whatever, and I think or someone brought up MSA issues, and basically I don't think they were allowed to
I just think
advertise as much.
You got thinking like NASCAR. NASCAR controls what goes in your car. Like, hey,
yeah. Well, I didn't think it was going to make a comeback in NASCAR because I not to say it ever was, because I think the only tobacco sponsor ever allowed in NASCAR even back then was if it was an R.J. Reynolds brand of tobacco. Like, so that's why you only saw Camel sponsored Jimmy Spencer, but then as soon as they wanted to brand it more with Winston cigarettes and the No Bull branding, they wanted it. They were like, okay, you're going to run this branding now. Yeah. And they started that in 98, I think.
Might have been sooner. Yeah, 98, 97, something like that.
And that made sense, but but it was always open season in IndyCar and F1. So now you see it a little bit in F1, but you don't see it as much as I thought I would. I really thought I would. When I was a kid, I thought back then, back in 2013, I was in high school. I was a senior in high school. I was sitting there thinking, man, by the time I'm out of college, I bet the whole Formula One grid will be all e-cigarette sponsorship. Nope.
I just one team. It got a bad rep right away, and I think issues sprung up, health issues, and okay, we're not going to touch that. And I don't know how IndyCar and F1 works with them. Hey, we want to be sponsored by this brand. If you got to introduce it to the sanctioning body, and they have to kind of approve it. I know you go to certain countries, they have a no-go, like many countries, dating back, to West Cigarettes and McLaren. Yeah. They'd run Mika or David on the side, for when you couldn't run West. So I think it's just one of those things. You're like, it was. I don't want to call it smart. It was ingenious. Is maybe the best term. It was an ingenious idea that obviously still has negative connotations to your health, and you got people you just don't want to touch that. You don't want to sound like you're promoting that. That
I thought it was crazy because when in 2019 when Fernando Alonso was here, he literally his entire fire suit said RJR Vapor on. I mean, it was in plain lettering, RJR Vapor, like RJ Reynolds Vapor Company. I was like, okay, this is happening. I keep feeling like it's coming. I've gotten so off track here. I'm talking about e-cigarettes. I don't even smoke. I never smoked. Don't smoke, kids. James Jakes ran this beautiful Acorn stairlifts car. See, that's what happens if you smoke. You need an Acorn stairlift. Sorry, not really, not always.
Good plug.
Not always, but yeah. So James, he drove this beautiful car, and he actually did have his best career finish of second at Texas in this car. No, not at Texas, at Detroit, at second Detroit race. It's right next to Texas, so that's why dyslexia caught up. But then he finished sixth at Houston later in the year, and he had pretty good runs, but overall he was pretty mediocre because it's James Jakes. Come on, nobody hires James Jakes because he's gonna be that great. They hire him because he brings money. Don't get me wrong, I like James Jakes as a person. I really do like him as a person, but we all know that he was never going to anything more than what he was in IndyCar. But yeah, he had that beautiful Acorn stairlifts car, and I just miss it a lot. He ended up finishing 19th in points that year, so really a forgettable season. He was out of the whole series by 2014. But came back in 2015, ran one season with Schmidt-Peterson Motorsports, and then has basically never been heard of again. He used to be very active on Twitter, and now James Jakes has just completely fallen off the face of the earth. I don't think he's on any social media anymore. So, yep, that's all I got. Josh, go ahead and take it over because I'm taking too much time anyway.
I went with Townsend Bell's number 60 Sunoco Panther Racing Chevrolet, which he drove in the Indy 500. It's basically a yellow all yellow car with blue along the top of the central body of the car, and then between the front tires where the number is located. There was also red kind of accents sprinkled across there too. Not super fancy. I don't think it's going to win an award for coolest looking paint scheme, but to me, what I love about it, and I've mentioned this before, anything gasoline related, motor oil is kind of it's a whole different subcategory. But when we talk about gasoline, so Phillips, Sunoco, we see those paint schemes. That's always going to catch my eye, and the Shell paint schemes as well back in the day, especially before they were just combinations of Shell Pennzoil. So that's a big reason why I chose it. I do like the car personally. I think it's eye-catching to me. I just don't think it's eye-catching to the general paint scheme discussion public. So this isn't going to win any awards on Reddit paint scheme discussions is what I'm saying, folks. So he started 27th, but he did finish 22nd, 8 laps down, but he did lead a single lap. So not very successful day. By Townsend Bell standards. Later, he would have a shot at really almost winning the 2016 500 before issue on pit road, but kind of hampered his day there. But I did like this paint scheme. Again, Sunoco is a big reason why I chose it. There were some good paint schemes this year, but that one definitely caught my eye.
This paint scheme you picked is in a movie. Do you know it's in a movie?
Is it Turbo?
It was advertising a movie. Yeah, it was literally the fun fact about this paint scheme. I'm surprised you didn't bring it up. Was it was actually made to advertise Turbo, and that exact paint scheme was in Turbo advertising. And this is greatest part about Turbo is it not only does that, it revealed the 2014 Indy 500 logo before IMS officially did, which is fun because when the movie came out, I don't think the logo was out yet. And then when you saw the movie, that was where you saw the logo for the first time. And yes, Townsend Bell's car, this car that raced in the Indy 500 was actually also basically a promo car for Sunoco in the movie as basically like a product placement.
I totally forgot about that. So thank you for sharing that. Wow. There you go. Thank you, Rob. It's a little bit of a joint selection here, but good. Yeah, I totally forgot about that.
You're talking to the guy who saw Turbo on opening night when it came out. And fanboyed about Paul Page having a small cameo in it.
Can I admit something to you without you ending the Skype call in this Discord session?
No, yes, you can. I'm going to assume it's the worst, so go for it.
I have never seen that movie.
It's not worth your time. It's really not anything to write home about.
Okay.
It's not Cars level of good.
Okay. Well, I've truthfully, I've never heard anything great about it, so it's probably why I never saw it. And while I've had the opportunity to watch it free on some sort of streaming service, I think it's been on Xfinity on demand for free, except with
They had a Netflix original cartoon series called Turbo Fast.
I do know that. Yeah.
For a couple of years. They had actually. I have the video game that came out for Turbo, but I was very disappointed because it's not a racing game like I expected. Now the mobile version, I think the mobile version and the Nintendo 3DS versions of the game are actually racing games, but the console versions are all like Tony Hawk Pro Skater skateboard games. Like you're Turbo and you're trying to pull off skateboarding moves as a snail. It's really lame. It's really lame. It really bothers me that they didn't make it a racing game. Like, because the mobile game and the 3DS game are actually really good racing games for what they are, but the console games are just really terrible skateboard game wannabes. Like you could literally get a better game by just buying Tony Hawk's Pro Skater or Skate 3. You get a better game by buying those two. Why would you buy this? You know what I mean? Especially at that time when it came out, you would have better luck finding a better skateboard game in Tony Hawk Pro Skater or Skate 3 than you would Turbo Super Stunt Squad.
All right. Well, Rob, I think we should move on because we're 41 minutes into this and we're only
God, what is wrong with me, Josh? I'm so sorry.
We are wildly behind, unlike last week where we kept on track really well. But okay, so top takeaways here: ARCA at Talladega. Corey Heim ended up winning, as you mentioned. You teased it earlier. This was a snooze fest until about 23 to go.
Well, I will say that I was actually impressed by the amount of side-by-side racing produced by an ARCA Super Speedway race. A lot of people on Twitter, and myself included, were calling this simply the best ARCA Super Speedway race in at least 3 or 4 years.
That's fair. I mean, yeah, that is fair up until that point. But to me, I'm still like, this is crap. This is not good. I asked myself again, what would this race look like if we combined ARCA East, ARCA West, and ARCA into one division, and you have 15 really good competitive cars out there, and mix out there with the second place finisher Dave Maters and their cars of the world? Just makes you wonder. But obviously, the big thing here that we need to talk about is the accident for Derrick Lancaster.
This one was scary.
Very scary. We've seen fire in stock cars.
Yeah.
All right. That's nothing out of the ordinary. I haven't seen a fire like that didn't go out. I'm thinking, is he unconscious? Did he pull the fire extinguisher? Because if he did, he didn't really do a great job. I know Bob Pockrass tweeted that NASCAR did impound the car. They're going to look at it, which is good. I didn't get to watch, kind of a spoiler for later, I didn't watch the pre-race show for the Cup Series. So, Rob, did you watch the pre-race show for the Cup Series?
I was watching IndyCar.
Okay. I watched IndyCar. This is cool, too. IndyCar, the race concluded at like 2:34, and I typically leave for work at like 2:30. So I stayed behind, and I watched the end of the race, so I was able to watch the whole race. But yeah, I mean, there's an update here. So Lancaster, we saw him get out of the. We didn't see him get out of the car, but he's on the ground. He walks over to a gurney. We later learn that from his wife, they had 2nd and 3rd degree burns on his arm, neck, face, and he was on a ventilator as they checked for lung damage. And later, his wife posted that he would be on a ventilator for the first 48 hours and was being transported to the University of Alabama burn unit. Again, this is crazy. I mean, it just blows
an accident like this, at least in NASCAR in the last 10, 15 years, man.
Yeah, and Bob Pockrass tweeted 10 hours ago at the time of this recording that he said an update from Beth Lancaster on her husband, ARCA driver Derrick Lancaster. This is a quote from her. I want to thank everyone again for their prayers and support. Derrick remains hospitalized in critical but stable condition. And he is still on a ventilator. The doctors say he will likely remain on a ventilator for another 2 to 4 days, but they will begin weaning him from it when the time is right. I will share another update tomorrow and continue to lean on your prayers and support. So, I mean, this is pretty serious. These things, obviously, we didn't see that in the broadcast, but the fire was very scary. And you just don't like to see that. So obviously, we're glad he is in stable condition at the very least.
Mm-hmm.
There. Aside from that, the race, the finish was rather exciting. I think Brett Holmes wants that one back. He got way too far out there, and he was asking to be passed. I don't know if he doesn't get that far of a jump, I think he can win that race. I think he can block the Venturini cars, but he just got too far out there, man.
Yeah, I mean, overall, I was I found the race to be very enjoyable. I saw the last. I kind of listened to the last half of it because I was driving to IMS to get my COVID shot. Like, I was gonna make it, and then they had that accident, and then it kind of pushed it a little later, so I had to listen to it. But I didn't really see the finish live, but I watched it later, and I mean, it was kind of a boring finish, but the racing getting up to it was really good. So, that's all I have to say about ARCA.
It
was an ARCA super speed race. There's not much to write home about it.
Yeah, it was a better race than it certainly had been in the last few years. I will say again, just because I'm going to do a selfish plug, ARCA does not belong on a super speedway track except for Daytona in the sprint to kick off the season. Other than that, I don't want to see them on there. It doesn't matter if they combine or don't combine the divisions at all. Xfinity Series. Hey, the race was on Fox. The only time we're going to get to see the Xfinity Series on the big Fox, but it was on Fox, so that was good.
Yeah, I love how you put lots of commercials here. Did you see on Twitter Chad Ochocinco? If you remember him, former Bengals wide receiver and former reality TV show star, basically was trying to watch NASCAR, and he's trying to watch it like I guess he watches F1, and he's trying to watch for the strategies, and he's getting pissed off like every single time there's a commercial. He's tweeting like, "I can't follow the strategies. There's too many commercials." And it's like, dude, Chad, believe me, we've been NASCAR fans for years. You ever see Talladega Nights? They inserted an Applebee's ad in the middle of a race accident, and that was seen as an inside joke because, let's be honest, that was at the time. That was not something that was far off of something that would have happened at NASCAR back then and still would happen now. And that's why that joke lands so well even today. Like, I think people watch that scene in that film and they think of it as, oh, haha, it's funny. They just wanted a product placement. No, this is an actual legitimate meta joke that you have to be a NASCAR fan to understand. Yeah. And I think it's like, okay, hey, Chad Johnson, I appreciate your enthusiasm for NASCAR. I totally get it. But, I mean, this poor guy is trying to watch the Xfinity race and the Cup race, and he's just too annoyed by the commercials. And I'm like, I get it. Man, we've been clamoring about this for years and years and years. We're not going to win on this stuff. They're going to keep selling ads, and they're going to tell us about side-by-side, but they're only going to go to it whenever they feel like it.
Here's the thing. I can get if this is a Kansas race, no offense to Kansas, but this is a Kansas race or a Richmond race last week, and okay, let's pay for this product and let's go to commercial, all right? But a Talladega race or a Daytona race is not, or a Bristol race is not the time to not utilize side-by-side technology. They should have been going side-by-side. I get it, okay. If the tower, if we want to let the dog run the show, the dog being TV, okay, the television, the broadcaster, okay. If we want them run the show, let's run under when a caution comes out, an extra lap or two to let them get that fill. Let them get that fill.
Right, because like most sports now have what's called a media timeout. Like football has it, basketball has it. They have a media timeout, so they could go to commercial and miss a chunk of the action. Yeah. You don't want to miss the action, but you have to have a time to take commercial because you have to pay the station bills, right? Yeah. So that's what they have those for. I feel like if NASCAR wants to institute something like that under caution,
I think they already have.
Just like the NBA and NFL do it when there's a timeout. There's timeout happens. Okay, we go to commercial.
I think they already have because we see in some of these races, like the commercial is the caution is ridiculously lengthy. I think in a way they've gotten better at it, but during stage we already waste laps under stage cautions. Just go to caution. Go to go to commercial, get it over with, but we need to show as much green flag coverage as possible, at the very least, side by side. So that was disappointing. Other thing I want to note here, we'll kind of lead into it a little bit. There's no big crashes before the beginning of stage 3. There really wasn't a big crash because we really didn't get the opportunity to have a big crash. But I feel bad
not really.
for Dylan. My gosh, here's a guy.
Poor guy.
Daytona was really the only issue that was his own causing when he did cause that big win at Daytona. Okay, he got a little overzealous, got a little anxious, and in wrecks. But at Homestead, a bolt goes through his radiator, ends his day. At Las Vegas, his spotter's radio dies. Doesn't know Brett Moffitt's on his outside and crashes. And then here, a tire goes down on Joe Graf Jr.'s car, goes up the track, hits Michael Annett, and who does Michael Annett get T-boned by? Ty Dillon. But Ty Dillon probably is going to walk away with no issues, except Colin Garrett drives through the middle of the two and sends him up the track, boom, ends his day. Here's a guy just wanting to have an opportunity to stay in the sport, show what he can do, and he's a perfect example of why the results don't tell the whole story. He ran great at Daytona. He had an okay day going at Homestead. Had a pretty decent day at Las Vegas. I just think one of the biggest problems was he never had the best Gibbs car. When he was on the racetrack, that 54 was never better than the 18. At best, he was second once, the second best car. I mean, usually the 19 or the 20 were better than him, at least at Homestead in Las Vegas. But I just feel bad for him. We obviously talked about how he kind of poured his heart out, wore his emotions on his sleeves on the social media a few weeks ago, especially after the Las Vegas disappointment. Rob, just to kind of continue on here because we did press 51. Colleague racing, just so dang good. I want to say colleague racing reminds me of DEI at these super speedway races back in the early 2000s. If you were going to win at Daytona or Talladega, you were going to have to beat the 8, the 15, and the 1. All right? You were going to have to beat them, hands down. And I like the colleague mentality that it's I don't care who wins. I don't care who wins. I just want one of our cars to win, and us to finish 1, 2, 3. And the drivers buy in on that too. And that is rare. I don't know if you could get that in the Cup Series, or maybe you could. Maybe this is that team that's going to change the game, But they don't care who wins. And you can tell that by when Jeb Burton did win, was declared the winner. I think it was AJ Allmendinger who broke the news to him. Hey, buddy, you're an Xfinity Series winner. And him and Haley had just pure joy that, hey, my teammate won. Not only is it his first win, but his first win of the season. He's in the playoffs. And I think they would have had that same reaction if this had been Jeb Burton's 10th career win. There's just going to be that pure excitement and just happiness for him and their teammate as well. I think Jeb Burton would have done that the same way. Had it been AJ or Justin in that situation. But yeah, obviously, like I mentioned there, Rob, I'll let you talk in a second. First-time winner in the Xfinity Series this year, joins Gibbs, Snyder, and Josh Berry. That's 4 out of the last 5 super speedway wins for colleague racing. Obviously, the only one they didn't win was Daytona earlier this year, and Austin Cindric won that race. This team's dang good at them, dude. They're good. Yeah. They are good at these super speedways. So, Rob, do you have anything you want to add for the Xfinity Series? I mean, I thought it was a great race. I love the package going on there that they have, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in a segment or a mini segment or two. But I enjoyed the race.
I got to say I enjoyed the race, too. I'm happy that Jeb won. Just a shame it ended under caution and didn't really give us a good chance to have an exciting finish.
But if you had to choose, if you had to have a guy win in the rain circumstances,
yeah, I would prefer it to be Jeb.
Yeah, it was he definitely deserved that because he drove his heart out. I mean, and he had a great run. I mean, it wasn't like he just fell into the situation. He won that race because he was leading and he drove his way up there even after he fall back. On to IndyCar here. Rob, I missed like the first 10 laps, but I was able to watch most of the race before I had to get ready and watch at the same time. What were your initial reactions from the IndyCar race?
IndyCar race was really good. I've always liked St. Petersburg as a track. I think it's a really, really fun track. It's a quick track. It's got a lot of really interesting elements to it. I was really enjoyed. I just got to say, there's a lot of unfair criticism being given right now to Jimmy Johnson,
I
and
agree.
I just don't think it's fair. Look, a lot of people have been bringing it up is Johnson is on pace. I mean, he's not going to have good finishes. He's not going to finish very well. But the fact of the matter is, Jimmy is within a second or less of the field constantly. And in how competitive this series is this year. I mean, this series is outrageously competitive. I mean, positions are determined by tenths in qualifying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you are looking at simply the most competitive field ever in the history of the IndyCar series, and probably maybe in the history of any motorsport, period. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a field this diverse and this accomplished before in my life. I mean, you are looking at a series with multiple Indy 500 winners, multiple IndyCar champions, a 7-time NASCAR champion, a Supercars champion, a Bathurst 1000 winner, a man with multiple Formula One podiums in Roman Grosjean. You're looking at Le Mans winners in Bourdais, who's also a 4-time Champ Car champion. I mean, this field is so stacked, and that's just scraping the surface. I haven't even talked about the young kids like Herta, Newgarden, guys like that. I'm talking about the old guard still. This is not even regarding the young kids who are tearing it up right now.
Yeah.
This for Jimmy Johnson to qualify and be relatively competitive with the back end of the field. I mean, really, the fact of the matter is, if Jimmy Johnson could be competitive with the, and with 15th through 24th, that's all I'd ask of him. That's all I'd ask of him. Finish the race and be competitive between the lower half. You're not racing Newgarden. You're out here racing Chilton. You're out here racing Kellett. Accept it and beat them, because you can. He can beat them. He should beat them.
Yeah.
There's no reason Jimmy Johnson should not be able to beat Max Chilton or Dalton Kellett. He is miles ahead of a driver of both of those guys, and this is coming from one of Max Chilton's biggest fans. I love Max Chilton, but I'm not going to beat around the bush and pretend like he's some great driver better than Jimmy Johnson. No, the fact of the matter is, guy sucks and always has sucked, but I love him anyway. And I don't care who knows. I love that guy, and he could suck all day, and I would still watch him and still buy his clothes and his merch. Point is, Jimmy Johnson is doing way better than anyone else would in his position. If you plucked any NASCAR driver out there, except probably the Busch brothers, and put them into Jimmy Johnson's position right now, they would struggle far worse. And I'm guaranteeing that. Okay, maybe not like someone like Allmendinger, but I'm talking somebody who hasn't set foot in an IndyCar before, like a Kyle Busch. I think Kyle Busch is the only one who's comparable, but even he says it's going to be it's really hard to do that without running a full season. Fernando Alonso said, dude, I don't know if I'm going to get this Indy 500 thing without running a full season. It's just not doable. Alonso said that. Now, whether or not he'd come back and run the 500 is still TBA. He's not closing the door entirely, but it's unlikely, because I think he knows and has accepted that he's probably going to get 2 legs of that Triple Crown, and it's probably just going to have to be enough. Not very many people are going to get that Triple Crown. The last person who has the opportunity is Juan Montoya, who's probably, I don't know, he could win Le Mans, but a step yet. But my point is, Jimmy Johnson does not deserve this a long time. Can't set the bar high when these guys jump from series to series. Sam Hornish,
he's going to run just to kind of get his feet wet and his sea legs. He's going to take the next half to prepare himself for 2022, where he will then, I think, compete for
top 10s.
He'll compete for top 10s, and hopefully by the end of 22, he'll compete for podiums, maybe a win. But I think this is
everybody says when they interview Chip and everybody who works with him, he's the hardest working guy they've ever met. And they sing his praises.
He's not going to go down without a fight on this. I think no one should question Jimmy's commitment to this. It's just going to take time to adjust, to learn the car. Like this race when he stalled there at the hairpin. I just think I think he was just learning. Okay, what do I got to do? What's the mental steps? Where if that Scott Dixon you goes through there, his brain is in muscle memory mode. Boom, 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 boom. Let's reverse out. All right, let's go. And Jimmy had to learn that. So you can't. I mean, you can certainly simulate that. I would think to an extent, but that's something that you got to learn real life. You got to go through that. You're not going to be able to feel the bumps going down the straightaways there at St. Pete and know, like, okay, I can't brake here. I need to brake here. I need to turn here, and I need to enter the corner right to hold off the people behind me.
And even Grosjean and McLaughlin are struggling, and they did struggle at St. Petersburg. So again, I look at this, and I really want people to just stop. It's like, relax on the criticisms of these guys.
Yeah.
They're 3 rookies who are literally being thrown in to a whole new series coming from 3 completely different backgrounds.
I just think
enjoy the ride. I'm saying enjoy the ride. Enjoy this season of IndyCar as much. Relish in it. Like, if you go to a race this year, in an IndyCar race, I need you to go to that merch hauler, and I need you to buy Jimmy Johnson swag. I need you to buy Grosjean swag. I need you to buy McLaughlin swag. Just like I bought, Allmendinger swag when he ran Indianapolis, because this is, we might never see this again. We need to cherish this.
Yeah.
IndyCar has had such a beautiful, amazing revolution in the last 10 years, where drivers from all over the world in all different disciplines are seeing it as a legitimate place to test their skills amongst the best. There are people out there saying that there are so many IndyCar drivers who should be given a shot at F1 who just don't have the budget. And a lot of them probably are going to look at you and sell them the same way. I don't think I want to. I think I'm having too much fun here. Look at what Rossi says. Yeah. Rossi at one point was hell-bent on never going anywhere but Europe. Now he wouldn't leave IndyCar if Mercedes called him tomorrow. I think Grosjean is going to get to a point where he's going to be like, why did I not try this sooner? Mm-hmm. I think Grosjean is going to get to a point in his IndyCar career, especially if he has as good of a run as he did at Barber 2 weeks ago, some other time. I know Pietro's going to be in the car this week for Texas, but these guys are going to have. We are witnessing a beautiful era. I mean, this is like when Rubens Barrichello ran in 2012. We did not cherish that as much as we should have, because Rubens was mostly at the back. We should have cherished that more. Rubens came out and ran the Indy 500 with Kanaan. We should have cherished that more. Why didn't we cherish Rubens Barrichello trying IndyCar more? I feel like that's almost an afterthought to some people. I mean, this is somebody who did, for all intents and purposes, have one of the more successful Formula One careers with Ferrari, and he came and tried his hand at IndyCar. When are you going to see these things again? Enjoy these people. Don't criticize. That's all I'm going to say about it, because I understand we have to move on.
I was just going to say, Colton Herta, very impressive. Especially.
Oh yeah, by the way, Colton Herta won the race. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, well, and I think it was fun to watch him hold off, and when maybe Joseph Newgarden had the advantage there on a couple restarts, at least in the first lap on that last one. Herta's going to be fun to watch. I think he's kind of going to be like a Kyle Larson to Chase Elliott. He's going to have to force Alexander Rossi to step up his game in a game that he really needed to step up from last year in general. And now you're in the same house. You're not driving a stepsister car. Now you're driving a sister car to him. So that's going to be I think that's going to be a fun dynamic to watch, the Herta Rossi deal. Hopefully Rossi can pick things up, because he's a fun talent to watch.
Oh yeah. Everybody loves Rossi. He's just been off his game the last year.
Yeah. All right, well, on to the Cup Series, where we're probably going to have the biggest conversation here.
Let's just get straight to the point and talk about Logano's flip and fallout from it.
Yeah, I think obviously the flip. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say my stuff, and then Rob, I'll let you talk. So
go for it.
My deal is, obviously it's scary. Anytime a car gets in the air, you're worried, what's happening. And here from the backstretch, you don't necessarily have fans to worry about. It's not going through the trial, it's going down the straight. So you kind of don't have to check off those boxes of worry. But to me, David Reagan. I'm going to pull up David Reagan's tweet here, and I apologize for not having it up here. He quote tweeted a Bob Pocker's tweet, correct? Yeah, he says, right. Okay, so Bob Pocker's tweeted Logano to MRM. The big spoiler is causing big crashes. It's not okay. David Reagan quote tweets that and says, LOL, the drivers are causing the wrecks. I think he's like 85% right. And here's why. The drivers didn't create the package. NASCAR did. I think the package in the spoiler, when he turned, I don't think, if he doesn't turn completely backwards, I don't think he rolls over. I think he just gets collected by a couple cars and there's a bigger crash. I think that, to quote a two-time Xfinity Series champion and a 16-time most popular driver in the Cup Series, giant-ass spoiler, played a big role in that. All right? If Logano doesn't turn backwards, boom. He's not going up in the air. This package that they have with the spoiler is causing too big of runs. I don't think the drivers have enough time to react. So what we have here is a problem. I think in most other races with the package that NASCAR has going on, like at mile and a half, it's parity versus competition. That's the problem that we talk about. Do we want the cars to be equal? Do we want the restarts to be exciting? Or do we want there to be pure competition where drivers and teams who are the best are going to win, who play the tire strategy right, are going to win? When it comes to super speedway racing, it's a matter of safety versus excitement. All right, entertainment, safety versus entertainment. Whichever one you want to put in there, there's synonyms at this point. So the runs that they are getting and the current package that they have, it's very exciting. It is super exciting to watch. But at what cost? What cost you draw? Rob, you and I talked about it a little before the show. I think with the Ryan Newman wreck and then with the Joey Logano wreck, we've maybe seen where I don't want to think it was an intentional. It's probably a really bad oversight that there's an issue with the roll cage. And Rob, I think we talked about this last February with Ryan Newman. Is there something they can do that's going to allow the driver to get out safely and in a timely fashion, like dragsters use with their what do they call that, Rob? With the dragsters, the roll cage around them? What do they call that?
You're asking the wrong guy. I do not watch NHRA.
I thought you had it off the top of your head. That's okay. But you look at a roll cage and around the driver, it's quite encompassing. But in a stock car, you need to get out quickly because of a fire or whatever. You don't want to be hindered too much. But there's certainly things with the car and the safety in general that we can look at and learn. I'm not this is why I haven't been a fan of this package. It's just I just think it leads to more issues and causes more wrecks where they're unnecessary. The drivers are going to be aggressive. All right. I had just as much fun time watching the Xfinity Series race, which I think has a superior package across the board to the Cup compared to the Cup Series. And I think if the same thing happens to an Xfinity Series car that happened to Joey Logano on Sunday, they're not going to roll over. Or they might get a little airborne. The rear tires might lift off a little bit, but he's not going to go over. He's not going to blow over. He or she's not going to blow over. So, to me, I think we need to go back to the board. What do we want? And I think the drivers... I'm not going to go be as crass to suggest that drivers should go on strike. I don't think that's the solution at all. But I think the drivers collectively need to go to NASCAR and say, look, safety versus entertainment. What is the balance? And I think the balance is off at this point. They need to. You can have an exciting race. The Xfinity Series race was exciting. Mm-hmm. They have smaller spoilers. They have that beach ball, as many people describe it, the bubble that they use. And I know some people might say, well, if you do that, the Cup Series guys are going to go single file. I don't believe that. I think there's too many guys like Chase Elliott and Denny Hamlin who aren't content in sitting in line and just clicking off laps. I don't think there's too many guys like that. And I think not to throw the M word out there, but the manufacturers, hey, buddy, what are we doing allowing a Toyota to lead this race? We're Chevrolet. Get out there, get in line, let's go. I don't buy that. I think if you want to help that, I know I'm ranting on a lot here. Reduce the race length. I do not believe Talladega should be 500 miles. Either race, reducing the 400. That means there's less time. That means there's less time in the stage. Less time before that green and white checker flies twice. There's less time before the checker flag flies. There's one less pit stop to fix your car, So to me, I think there's ways to fix this. And the biggest thing isn't the race length, it is the package. And I want to see that spoiler reduced for Daytona in July. Don't tell me it can't be done, because it can, and NASCAR has done it before. Rob, I step off the box.
There's a lot of statements I echo in that, because it's very. My whole thing was, I think I said on Twitter, and I might have interpreted Joey's thing wrong, because I still think it baffles me that they think that, oh, we can prevent these cars from turning over. Well, no, you can't. I'm sorry. No, you can't. You can't, because basic physics dictates that as long as you're traveling at a high rate of speed with the amount of downforce that you have on these race cars, that as soon as a little bit of air gets underneath them, they will start to generate lift. And this is how airplanes work. It's how airplanes are able to come off the ground and fly. The only difference is, an airplane has wings and it's being controlled by a pilot that is controlling a bunch of other intricate things. I don't know. I'm not an aviation technician, so I don't know how any of this works. But for my basic understanding of how an airplane should work based on physics, is it has wings and a bunch of other mechanisms in there that's helping it fly. Whereas a Cup car is meant to go fast and turn left. It is not meant to take off. So when all of the what's the word I'm looking for here? When everything aligns just perfectly, when all the stars align just perfectly, and that car gets turned around like that, and it gets hit, in this case like it did by Stenhouse, and it pops that little bit up in the air, as long as that car was traveling at least over 180 miles an hour, there's stopping that thing from turning over. I'm sorry. There's not much stopping that thing from turning over. But the problem here, so my thing is, when I heard that from Logano, I was like, well, this is ridiculous. You guys, him and Ryan Newman both have been, Ryan Newman for longer has been complaining about these cars getting airborne and NASCAR not doing anything about it. Well, NASCAR can't change the laws of physics. Ryan, you should know that. You have a degree from Purdue. You should know that. Well, now I understand a little bit more after Logano posted pictures of his accident on Twitter. Seeing how much that roll cage collapsed and seeing how it looked like they had to cut they had to cut out Joey's window net from the bottom. The clamps and the hooks were stuck on there. It really says to me that NASCAR has a problem with the Gen 6. The Gen 6 is a problem, not just with the spoiler, like you mentioned. The package, change the package as soon as we can. But for the love of all that is good, there is something wrong with the roll cages of these Gen 6 cars. We've seen, NASCAR clearly claims that they did a lot of work and a lot of research after Ryan Newman's accident. But if Joey Logano experienced what he experienced, I don't think there was much done. Because if Joey Logano was almost crushed, and like he said, he came so close to being a Ryan Newman, having a head injury like that, I hesitate to see what would have happened if the car was going a little bit faster and had pancaked as hard as it did. I feel like that's a problem. It's a problem with a lot of things. It's first of all, it's drivers. It's drivers, because I say a lot of people brought this up. These drivers don't know how to race super speedways anymore. Well, first of all, no, they don't. Because you could go back 5 years ago and they figured out how to drive, and they could drive it. Watch the 2015 Daytona 500 and tell me that's not one of the best closing 30 laps you'll ever see, right? It still is. It's memorable for that reason alone. It's one of the only reasons I remember that season. But to be honest with you, I feel very, very strongly that it's also the drivers and it's the car and it's physics. The drivers need to calm down. Drivers need to chill. They're racing like crazy. This is what bothers me too, is they get all crazy for the stage finish. And it's like, and they block like crazy. And people bring up the point where they're like, well, with the runs you get, you have to block. Otherwise, you're going to go back. Well, no, you don't. I understand you have to block with 20 to go. That makes sense. 20, 30 to go, I get it. You're throwing blocks. You're trying to keep your track position at the very least. You're trying to stay out of the big one. You want to be in front of it. You don't want to be behind it. You know what I mean? But dude, if Logano's accident happened at the end of the first stage, that's ridiculous. There's no reason you need to be racing that hard coming to the stage finish. And this is further reason why I believe that stages should not be cautions afterwards. Why they should just throw the stage, record the top 10 at the line, they all get points, and keep them racing, keep the green flag out. That's how I think they should do stage racing. But that's ridiculous. There's no reason you're going to be racing that hard at the end of the stage. And they did it again at the end of stage 2. And then, of course, they did it again at the end of the race. They don't know when to calm down. You let this pack of hornets build up anxiety for 499 miles, and then the last mile, they lose all sense, basically. And that's what we saw on the last lap. There were like 3 or 4 different accidents on the last lap that could have been big ones that magically weren't. And then again, you have this comes down to, again, the package, the spoiler, and the Gen 6, the roll cage. Those are the things that I'm worried about. So, as much as I like to see a flip, let's be honest, I'm a 6 sadistic racing fan. I like to see my fair share of flips. When a car gets up in the air, I think that's pretty rad. I like to see the flip streak continue. But I also like it when the drivers walk away unharmed. And if Joey Logano is at risk of getting hurt because the car overturned, then I don't want to see that. You know what I mean? I want to see the driver get out unhurt, but I don't want to see him get hurt. And that's me as a fan, as a journalist, as what have you, whatever hat I'm going to put on. At the end of the day, I want to see the drivers get out of the cars unhurt, no matter what happens. And the fact of the matter is, we were very close to that not happening on Sunday, and NASCAR needs to do something to address that, because the racing is good. I mean, obviously, it could be better and safer, and not a 3-hour anxiety attack that it currently is. Because quite literally, watching Talladega now is, unless they're in a single file line, you are just waiting for them to wreck. I am just waiting for them to wreck. When is that big one going to happen? And it's going to take out half the field. When is Brad Keselowski going to get over Joey? When is Ricky Stenhouse going to go crazy? When is Logano going to push the hell out of somebody he's not supposed to push out? I'm waiting for that, and it happens every single race. These guys, I threw those guys out because they're the 3 that I think of whenever there's a big one. It's usually caused by Brad Keselowski, Joey Logano, and Ricky Stenhouse. Let's be honest. I mean, you can name those 3 guys as the probable causes for most accidents. They're the 3 guys that race the most reckless on super speedways. And it's ironic that, because I'm agreeing with Joey here, but I still think that he's still a little at fault, because if he had managed to last longer in the race, I guarantee you he would have been the one who caused an accident from trying to make an overzealous move or throwing a ridiculously stupid block when he doesn't need to. And again, I understand you need to block in order to protect your track position, but you don't need to be blocking as aggressively as they are when the runs are so hard. I mean, you see a car get up run, it's like 10-hour difference, and you get a car just swipe out in front of you. I mean, on the interstate, that causes an accident. It's a miracle it doesn't cause an accident more often in Talladega. I really don't have anything other to say about the race, Talladega, because to me personally, I felt like the race was an entire buzzkill. Keselowski winning buzzkilled it for me anyway, but I think just the way the drivers drove, it really made it seem like these guys have no respect for each other. They're all out there either for themselves or because they need the manufacturer to keep cutting them a check. And that's kind of how I'm feeling. I think it would behoove NASCAR to alter the package to make the runs not as crazy, and make it harder for guys to find each other. Because I think the part of what made super speedway racing so great in the past was that you kind of had to work with whoever was around you. You didn't have it wasn't as easy as it is now to fall back or go forward and get with the people you want. You literally just had to take your track position and work together with the people around you in order to get forward. It's not like that anymore. And I think that's really where we are having a disconnect on plate racing, because a lot of these drivers, especially the old guard like Harvick and even Logano and Keselowski to a lesser extent, but I'm thinking mostly guys like Harvick and Kurt Busch, guys who ran with the old car of yesterday, and that even the wicker blade, and not just the wicker blade, but with that package in general, guys who ran in the Xfinity Series between 07 and 2010 when they still had that old car and the wicker blade package, they get it more. I think they get it more. You don't see them as involved as you see the guys who have literally grown up with locking bumpers constantly. I mean, there's guys who've come up through the ranks where the Xfinity cars and the Cup cars had always locked bumpers until the Gen 6 came around. And for whatever reason, they still haven't adapted to the fact that these cars no longer lock bumpers like that. So, I don't know what we're going to do about it. It'll be interesting to see what Daytona's like, which stupidly isn't until frickin' August. But I digress.
Well, I just want to counter a couple things, and I think we'll disagree on a few things. I don't think the drivers have forgotten how to drive. I just think it's just a reaction time when something happens. If a guy makes a move to the inside, I know I'm relating back to the Xfinity Series a lot, but a guy makes a move to the inside and you want to block that. In the Xfinity Series, you have the opportunity to do that. Mm-hmm. In the Cup Series, you don't. You have to make split-second decisions quicker than a split second. You have to make a decision before something happens. You have to know in your mind, okay, if my spotter, you have to think in 3 different realms. If my spotter says, driver behind me to the inside, I got to go. I got to know, boom, I'm going to left. I don't have time to think, do I want to do that? Do I have time to delay? Not saying that the Xfinity Series guys have a day and a month to figure out whether I want to go to the inside or not, but I think that's something, it's just the package does not allow you to think. And if your drivers, they're going to be selfish. They're going for the points. You put points on the line. I don't care if there's a caution or not. I get what your point. Don't throw a caution on a road course for a stage. Absolutely not. I agree with that 100%. But on everywhere else, you kind of have to, because you're still going to you want to reset people at a mile and a half. But at Daytona or Talladega, if on the next lap I'm getting paid to win, if I win this lap and I'm first, I'm going to get 10 points. And the stage points, I'm going to do what I need to get in front. That's just the way it's going to be. You're still going to have wrecks, caution or no caution, that are still going to occur. You're still going to be aggressive out there. The biggest problem, obviously, the safety, and I teased on it. You really hit on it. They need to look at the roll cage. I agree. I think we got lucky again. Joey Logano has a right to be mad. I agree with him 100%. I thought the roof looked a little weird when I saw the video. I was sitting at work at lunch. And then you shared the Instagram post. It was his Instagram post, right? It was his personal account. Rob's nodding. And you see the extent in like, okay, wow, this was as bad as I thought it was. I have to agree. NASCAR needs to go back and say, okay, what did we miss? Because it's tough to predict, what can happen. We talked about Jimmy Johnson. It's tough to simulate something without it actually happening. Sometimes you have to have something to happen. Hopefully it's not bad. No one loses their life, but sometimes you need something to happen. Like, okay, maybe they did change something and it didn't work, or maybe it made things worse. Maybe that could have been the case as well. But to me, I don't think drivers have forgotten how to drive. There's certainly a generation deal. There's been a lot of different changes to super speedway racing from when they put the restrictor plate on the car in the late 80s through the CO until the COT entered in. There was basically just one form of super speedway racing. But in the last 14 years, we've seen so many changes to it, and a lot of it is because they can't figure out a package that they want to stick to, car design, and can we lock bumpers or not? Now the bumpers don't lock up. Drivers are always going to be aggressive, but to me, the whole thing centers around, you got to slow the runs down. If you slow the runs down, the drivers can be just as aggressive, if not more aggressive, that at coming to the end of a stage or the end of a race in the Xfinity Series car. You put the drivers in the Xfinity Series car so that we're around on Saturday, on Sunday, we're not going to see the craziness. You're not going to have the 500 miles of anxiety that you alluded to. Because I agree, it's very stressful to watch these races. Just knowing that a big wreck can happen, and a lot of cars can be taken out. And if it happens at the wrong place, worse things can happen. So, yeah, for me, again, Rob, you can disagree on things. That's fine. That's what this is for. I think for me, the whole thing centers around this, the package, and let's go back, review, what did we miss? What did we get wrong? What changes did we do on the safety of the car? Anything else to add on that before we wrap up the Cup Series?
No, I really think we should probably wrap up because we're almost about at an hour and a half, and we still got a lot of show to get to.
Okay, so obviously, we mentioned bracket. You mentioned Brad Keselowski won. That's 9 winners, different winners through 10 races. So we did hit that mark. Hopefully, we can maybe keep the thing rolling. There's a lot of big names who still haven't won. Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick, Chase Elliott still have not visited victory lane this year. Are the 3 big ones that come to mind? Kyle Busch. How did we forget him? 4. That's 4 big ones that have not visited victory lane. So. We're kind of shaping up. We should have at least 13 different winners before we get to the end of Daytona. Some road course craziness can happen on as well, and we still have one more super speedway race. Matt DiBenedetto, close one there. Real quick, Rob, do you think Matt DiBenedetto wins a race this year? That's a non-restrictor plate race.
God, I hope he does. That guy deserves it.
Yeah,
Wood Brothers deserves it. He deserves it.
I know
it should happen. It's overdue to happen. Matty D has been so close so many times, and I think when he finally gets that monkey off back, it's going to be the best feeling for every NASCAR fan out there.
I agree. All right, so let's move on here. That a lot of big thing to talk about there. The whole package, the safety deal. Let's get to the weekend wrap up here because I know Rob, you got a few things to talk about. The eRacing, iRacing, eNASCAR, iRacing Pro Invitational Series at the virtual Talladega Superspeedway was won by Brad Keselowski, so he swept the weekend. Can we say that? I'm going to say it. I'm going to make it a thing. The USF 2000 at St. Petersburg, race 1 was won by, and race 2 were both won by Christian Brooks. Indy Pro 2000 at St. Petersburg, race 1 was won by Braden Eves. Race 2, Christian Rasmussen. Then the Indy Lights was there as well. The whole road to Indy was there. Race 1 was won by Kyle Kirkwood. In race 2, David Malukas. And Rob, you wanted to talk about, I'll let you talk about because you have a few points you want to talk about. I watched the highlights. Kick it off here with Formula E.
Yeah, did you guys watch this Formula E race 1 specifically? So, give you a little TLDR on this. Basically, first Formula 1 race ever at a permanent road course.
Formula E.
They butchered it heavily. Formula E race, at a permanent road course. They butchered it heavily. They made it very weird. They had a very odd front stretch chicane that made no sense to anybody, and it was just in general a complete eyesore. And then they had another part where they cut the track, and they were using quite literally part of an access road as part of the track, which didn't make sense to me at all. But what really got weird was there's like 3 or 4 safety cars in this race, right? Because it was raining. So you would think we would get a good show, more or less. It was a pretty good show. There was a lot of passing. It was a good race. But the ending here, so basically in Formula E, for every safety car, you have, they do a energy reduction. Because the idea is in Formula E, if you're not familiar with Formula E, because I understand there's a lot of people out there who don't like it for one reason or another, so they don't watch it. But so if you're one of those people, I'm going to explain this to you. Whether or not you like this rule or not is, you can tweet me, hashtag RobinRoller at rpeters33. Let me know if you actually even like this rule or not. But the idea between it is in order to emphasize energy conservation, every time there's a safety car in Formula E, they'll reduce the total usable energy amounts. And so when they did that, they had so many safety cars that I guess people did not account for another safety car happening, or at the very least, Formula E ran an extra lap. Whatever. Basically, most, if not over half the field failed to finish because they ran out of energy. They ran out of usable energy. And if you run out of energy at the end of the race, regardless of whether or not you have any left, if you run out of usable energy at the end of the race, you're not classified. You're basically disqualified. Or you're not disqualified. You're just not classified as a finisher.
Right.
So, like, most of the field is not classified, and then the podium is, and the podium is made up of people from all over the finishing order. Nick DeVries ended up winning the race. I feel like that's a lot forgotten, but Nick DeVries did actually do a very good drive. Of course, Nick DeVries is probably miles ahead, one of the best Formula E drivers out there, probably behind Jev right now. And let me tell you something, this guy shouldn't be in Formula E. He should be in Formula 1. But he's definitely showing just how good he is, especially with that Mercedes team. But yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy finish. It's kind of like watching any other auto race where everybody's so tight on fuel and just everybody runs out at the last lap except for like 3 or 4 drivers. I mean, that's probably except it wasn't like, it didn't occur naturally like that. It occurred artificially because of a rule that was in Formula E. So good race overall, but crazy farcical ending. Race 2 was run by Jake Dennis of BMW Andretti. Nobody really saw this happening. Jake Dennis didn't really see it happening either, but he was pretty good to win. So good for BMW Andretti on that win. And then Super Formula had a race at Suzuka. Tomoki Nojiri wins the second Super Formula race. That's his second win in the second race. So now he's got every race over. He's leading the points, double points. So it's pretty good. And then, hey, again, this news got dropped, and so now we're going to talk about it every time they have a race. Stock Car Brazil. Welcome, Stock Car Brazil, to the Robin Roller family. I'm going to start talking about this because I now watch it. Could not believe Stock Car Brazil finally got a U.S. television deal on Motorsport TV. You can watch it in the U.S. and UK, pretty much anywhere you are, except probably in Brazil, I imagine, where it's probably still on terrestrial TV down there. I bet those lucky guys get to watch it down there, but everywhere else in the world, we didn't get to watch a beautiful racing series. So we were introduced, most of the world at least was introduced to Stock Car Brazil over the weekend. If you were able to watch it, I don't blame you if you didn't watch it live, because it started right as the IndyCar race ended and the NASCAR race began. So if you're a big fan of NASCAR and IndyCar, you probably prioritize Stock Car Brazil over that. But I tried to have it as a second screen for a little bit, but I ended up just watching the full race much later on my own time, because that's the nice part about it being on Motorsport TV. You can watch an on-demand version. You don't have to watch it live. You can watch it on demand if you want to. And I watched it. It was a really great race. Very interesting. Very unfortunate. Tony Kanaan made his series debut in Stock Car Brazil and promptly put it in the wall on the first lap. Ugh. Not exactly a good way to start, but it was interesting nonetheless. Didn't know that they ran double headers like that. They run race 1. It's like a 15 or 20-minute race. And then they immediately invert the field, and then you blink and the next race is underway. And they've inverted the field and everything. It's very interesting weekend setup. So very, very interesting. Now, the next race for Stock Car Brazil will be in May. So if you get an opportunity to watch Stock Car Brazil on Motorsport TV, I do highly recommend you take that opportunity. You can watch it on replay as well. But they do have English commentary, so don't worry about not knowing Portuguese or anything. But the race 1 winner was Daniel Sierra, and race 2 was Ricardo Mauricio. So yes, Josh, you have something you'd like to say?
Oh, sorry, I was going to wait for your thought there. I was just going to say that I wanted to just demonstrate to people on Racing Reference your Formula E controversy at the end of race 1. Sebastian Buemi went out on lap 1, retired, which is effectively 19th, if I'm doing my math right. But Oliver Rowland was disqualified, and he completed 24 laps.
Yeah, Rowland got disqualified. I think there was something.
There was 5 total cars that were disqualified who completed 24 laps.
Yeah, there was a ton of disqualifications.
Below Buemi, who is essentially classified and retired lap 1. It's very confusing. This is that I have to say that whoever had to sort that out and explain that just. Ugh.
The biggest problem that Formula E is going to have is trying to bill itself as an accepted form of motorsport is BS like that.
Yeah,
is when you have farcical rules. You have rules in there that are meant to do something but create a situation that you might be able to account for, you might not be able to account for. Yeah. I mean, Formula E is just going to have such a tough time being accepted by mainstream motorsports because there's still such a pushback on it. There's still so many people who's like, oh, it's golf cart racing. No, guys, it's a legitimate world championship utilizing a different power format.
Yes.
It's just got a lot of rules that are really funky.
And that's something I'm sure is going to be addressed in the off season because of
This isn't the first farce like that. Formula E's had a lot of crazy farces. Drivers exploit rules. Teams exploit rules. Drivers are confused on rules. Rules get added in randomly, or at what seems like at random, or like the crazy stuff, like the John Eric Verne penalty for not using
Both
a couple weeks ago for not using both attack modes because he didn't have the chance to, because the race ended before he could, because the race ended early under caution or whatever. It's stuff like that people that Formula E has to hash out and get correct before I think people are ready to accept it as a legitimate form of auto racing, which is really disappointing because I've been a day one adopter of Formula E. I found the races to be exciting. I try not to miss one. I will wake up crazy early to watch one. I support it. I supported the Jaguar I-Pace E-Trophy. I thought that was cool, even though the racing was complete garbage. I thought the concept behind it was cool. I even accept Extreme E. I think Extreme E is really cool. But Formula E is just going to have some problems, and stuff like that is going to be probably more or less detrimental to them.
Oh. All right. Well, with that, let's head on to the next segment here. Upshift, downshift. If you're a returning listener, hey, you know what's going on here. But if you're new, upshift means you agree. Downshift means you disagree, or you say yes or no to the question, the hypothetical. A couple hypotheticals out here today. And if we throw it into neutral, sometimes we just can't decide between one or the other. We don't have enough information, or what's happened once or twice with both of us. We just don't care. So, first question here, Rob. This one of those hypotheticals. Do you upshift or downshift the idea of Indy Lights being a support race for Formula E during the Brooklyn Street Circuit weekend?
I took a look at this before the show, and I actually had to think about this for a lot. I'm actually going to downshift on this because I think this actually, and here's the reason why, is I'm going to keep this as quick as I can, is I think it defeats the purpose of Formula E by doing that. I think if Formula E allows for a support race from cars that are quite literally, gas powered, it defeats their purpose. Their idea is trying to push and allow accepting, and not really push, but like try and develop electric racing. Because as I say a lot on this podcast, and as we're seeing a lot more in the news, car company after car company after car company is making the pledge to go all electric. They're setting their marks of when they're going to start only manufacturing electric cars. It's inevitable. If you're going to try and market that, you don't really want to be allowing a support race with the loud, V8 naturally aspirated Indy Lights engines. You know what I mean? As cool as it might be for a race fan, it's probably not what Formula E wants to attract as a demographic. And that's why, and I just think personally, if that's the case, like I think Formula E needs to have a solid support series. They tried it with the Jaguar I-Pace E-Trophy. Obviously, it didn't work out because COVID, and also because nobody cared. The racing was garbage, and it was
really bad.
Just, oh my God, the racing was just so garbage. You had old people who didn't need to be out. You need to have a legitimate junior series, but then again, at the same time, Formula E pretty much takes all the people who don't get to go to F1 anyway. So there's already people from junior series working up. There's nobody striving to get to Formula E. They're all striving to get to Formula 1, but then choose Formula E because Formula 1 usually isn't a realistic goal, and they see this as just as legitimate as Formula 1. So that's why I'm going to downshift on that.
Yeah, I didn't think you'd downshift for those reasons. But that's a great point, and that's kind of what I thought about. I'm kind of throwing it into neutral because I agree with everything you said. It defeats the purpose of what Formula E's objective is, and why manufacturers would want to get into the series. But I also kind of like the upshift because I think in general, motorsports, we need to work together and help promote. What this does is a crossover. You're going to get the American open wheel audience going with what is most likely probably going to be mainly European audiences watching Formula E because it's Formula. That's just my belief on that. But I just think for you, I throw it in neutral because I don't think it would work for all the reasons you stated, and I'm glad you kind of sucked the wind out of me on that one. So that was a great point that you brought up, and one I didn't expect. So the next question here, with rumors that Haas F1 team could be sold to Dmitry Mazepin, should it be a priority of Formula One to have an American-based team on the grid? Do you upshift or downshift?
I mean, this is kind of tough because I don't really think Formula One should be telling teams. First of all, here's the thing. Just because a team's based in America doesn't mean much. I mean, McLaren's basically owned by a bunch of American investors and Saudi Arabian investors. There's a lot of other Formula One teams that are owned by a bunch of American investors. There are technically American teams on the grid. They're just not based out of it, or historically. That Haas is the only one that's based out of America and historically American. There's always going to be rumors that Gene is going to sell the team to Dmitry Mazepin. I still don't think that's going to happen. I know it's probably easy to dots. Mazepin's got a lot of money. He wasn't allowed to buy Racing Point or whatever. They sold it to Lawrence Stroll. Well, yeah, probably because Lawrence Stroll has a better track record of not being, a sketchy businessman. I mean, in business, you have to be sketchy. But at the very least, Lawrence Stroll has never done anything as egregious as I think Mazepin has, at least press-wise. Lawrence Stroll is just simply a race fan who just so happens to be extremely rich. That's how I view him. He's a race fan who just so happens to be extremely rich. And whereas Mazepin is somebody who's pretty much just in it for his kid and to grow his own wealth. And I think it's not to say that Gene Haas isn't in there either. He's there to sell CNC machines. First and foremost, he's there to grow the brand of Haas CNC globally and worldwide, and also because he's a race fan. But I don't think it's going to be it's something that Formula One needs to make a priority. Like, we have to have an American grid on the team, because no, it's like Formula One has no debt to America. I don't know where people are getting this. Like, if people act like Formula One has this debt to America, no, Formula One doesn't owe America anything. Like, Formula One doesn't owe us anything. Formula One is European, and it always has been European. It tries to break in here. It tries to be worldwide. But the fact of the matter is, we're isolated. We're over here on this side of the world, we're an isolated area. We've been isolated. We had been isolated for millennia until like the most recent 300, 400 years. You know what I mean? It's just going to be tough to try and do that. It's nothing. Formula One doesn't need to get involved in that. I don't think that's something Formula One needs to get involved with. If they want to race 3 times here in America, 2 times in America, whatever, how many times they want to race here, that's fine. If it drums up interest from American investors or American race teams that want to put together an American team for the grid, then that's great. But I don't think it's anything Formula One needs to be pushing for, if that makes any sense.
You bring up great points with like people owning a team, but perception's everything. McLaren is British, all right. Haas is American,
right? And I'm not taking that. I wasn't making to say that it doesn't matter because they're not. I was saying that Americans are involved. You don't have to worry about Americans not being involved. Americans are very involved in F1 from a behind the scenes standpoint. No. You're not going to see. Yes, Haas is the only American-based F1 team, but at the end of the day, Americans are still involved in it. And so I feel like, at least, as long as that's the case, there's no real need to kind of push for there to be another American team in the event that Haas gets sold.
Right, but as I was going to say, perception is everything.
I understand that's perception.
If you're going to have 2 American GPs, it helps to have the American audience, which is growing. All right, ESPN, those numbers show. Drive to Survive has that, but I think it helps. So I upshift. It shouldn't be something that they're pushing. Formula One's going should actively go out and make it on okay, what's today's checklist to do? all right, we need to find a new American team in case Haas gets sold. They shouldn't do that, but they should sort of play behind the scenes roles of like, okay, are you interested? Or what can we do to convince you to start a team? Whether that's a group of investment groups coming together and starting a team, or an individual, whatever. I think for me, if I was, it's tough for me because I'm such a big racing fan. But if I'm just a casual 22-year-old going out there for to Miami to GP, we know how us Americans are. That's an American team. I want them to kick out there and kick all this European butt. That to me.
Except the fact that it's sponsored by a Russian chemicals company.
Right, but it's going to, and I think that's an interesting complication that's going on. But I mean, if I'm not going to start any rumors here, but let's say Penske was out there. I think Penske could do a great job of drawing together that let's kick some European butt or whoever. I mean, I'm not saying that's kind of a wrong way to go about it, but that's the mentality that young Americans, have, all right? Especially, you get the college ones, you get a couple beers in their stomachs. So that, to me, I think it should be a priority behind the scenes, because I think it just helps the cause. If they're wanting to grow the American audience, make that bigger. If you're going to have two GPs here, it helps to sell the product if you have an American team, because perception is everything. Next question here. When COVID-19 is behind us, the Formula 2 and Formula 3 championship should race at historic European race circuits like Imola that don't have the opportunity to be part of the Formula 1 calendar when not racing outside of Europe. Do you upshift or downshift?
This is really hard for me because, here's the thing. They did do this. They did actually do this. At least F3 did, I think, when it was GP3. And they had a whole GP2 Asia thing. They've had this. But I think what really has sold F2 and F3 for a lot of people, including myself, has just been it being companion weekends with F1. I understand the push behind it. I understand wanting to see them go to different circuits like that aren't on the F1 schedule. But, also, though, I think if I'm a race fan in Europe, I think I would rather go to an F1 race with an F2 support race than a standalone F2 race at Imola. You know what I mean? That's just me as a race fan. I'm sure it would be great television for the people who really like it and enjoy it. But I just don't know if it's economically viable at this moment, or if it will be in the future. It might just be economically viable for them to continue to race with F1 on F1 weekends. That's just me, and I'm looking at it from an economic standpoint. So for me, I'm kind of it's not really a downshift, but kind of is. It's really more of a neutral downshift. Not that exists, because it doesn't. But if I had to put a firm label on it, I guess I would downshift.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you there. As cool as it sounds that you get, maybe not necessarily historic, but circuits that don't have the ability or the opportunity to host a F1 race, as cool as that sounds, because it really would only work to me in Europe. It wouldn't work outside of it. But I downshift as well. I think it is a big selling point that they follow F1 to select events, a reduced number of events compared to what the races the F1 goes to. So, and the only way I could see it working is if you get them to go with a big sports car championship or other big racing forms. It's more than just F2 and F3 there. You'd have to have a bigger money point. I don't know if one exists.
You have like a lot of the smaller feeder series that I love watching, like European Formula Open, Formula Regional, the Formula Regional stuff. They'll go to those different racetracks that aren't on the F1 calendar, but they're always support races with a different series.
Right.
So like usually they're with the WEC, they're with the European Le Mans series, they're with a sports car series of some kind. That's usually very seldom do you see them be there on like as a standalone weekend.
No. This last one here, something we have not hit today. Keelan Harvick, Kevin Harvick's son, raced in the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series race on the virtual Talladega Superspeedway last Wednesday with all the big boys. Do you upshift or downshift?
I think my answer to this is get Brexton Busch in one of those things. Hell, what's here's the thing. When I was Keelan's age, I was playing on my simulator almost every day. My dad had a racing wheel and a racing game, and I was playing on it almost every day. And I wasn't terrible, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot from doing that. If Keelan Harvick's being serious, they gotta get those serious kids going. That's why I said someone like Brexton Busch, who's got a lot of, who's got experience behind the wheel. Probably not so much like in a. I know Brexton's too young. He's like 5. Keelan's a little older, so it probably works out with Keelan. But I'm looking at Keelan. It's like, this is still a video game. If he is talented enough, which I'm not saying he can't be, because when I was 8, yeah, I could hold a car in a computer in a straight line and hold my line and draft. So who's to say Keelan can't? If I can do it, and my father is not a race car driver, who's to say that Keelan can't? You know what I mean? So, I think it's great. I think it adds a layer of just a layer, an extra layer in general to eNASCAR. I think it's something that could, at the very least, and should generate some more eyes to e-racing, because this is something that's possible. You don't have to be, a certain age to compete. It's for safety reasons. As long as you have a steering wheel, an iRacing subscription, and a computer that can run it, and talent to race in the simulator, there's no reason you can't. And the fact Keelan didn't run into anybody that I know of. I don't think he really made much of a splash. It wasn't like he was in the way or he was bothering anybody. I mean, he was racing just like anyone else would out there. Just so happens he's like 8 or 9 or whatever. And to me, I say, who cares? If he could keep his nose clean and race with adults, he should be allowed to. I don't see any reason why he can't. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are going to look at that and say it's ridiculous and silly and whatnot. But no, this is a virtual racing experience. I have absolutely no problem with Keelan Harvick going out there as long as he's able and proves that he could keep his nose clean, which, to my knowledge, I didn't watch this race, but to my knowledge, I think he did.
Follow me. I downshift because I think him participating delegitimizes a little bit of the race. All right, virtually. I know it's virtual world. I know it's on the simulator. I feel like it delegitimizes what the other guys are doing, the professionals are doing. But I upshift because, like you mentioned, it puts eyes on it. It shows that, hey, it doesn't matter who you are, how old you are, maybe a little bit, but it's equal. Racing is equal. It doesn't matter. In real life, you definitely want to put Keelan Harvick in an actual race car, but it doesn't matter if the equipment is equal. I'm just trying to say here that auto racing is the only equal sport where it doesn't matter who you are.
I've said that for years, man. That's been my mantra. That's one of the main reasons.
Right. It doesn't matter who you are. It's equal. So for that reason, I upshift, but I can't really pick a one. I'm doing a lot of neutral shifting today, but I can't really pick one because I feel like it kind of delegitimizes what they're trying to do here to preview the next race. But I upshift because, again, it just proves that you can do it. And it was kind of cool to see, father-son racing. Look, Keelan's never going to have the opportunity to race against his dad in real life in the Cup Series. It's too far down the road. Kevin Harvick, I just won't be racing. I don't think he'll be racing beyond the current contract that he's in, and Keelan won't even be 18. So that's cool, but I'm very mixed feelings about it. Is what to sum it up. So that's just the way that goes, I guess. Rob, I think it's time to get to the rollers featured racetrack here.
Do that quickly, because holy cow, these poor people have been listening to our banter for way too long.
Well, I guess we'll shoot for the next week, the next 2 weeks to try to keep it to at least under 2 hours. We'll get 2 in a row one of these times this year. All right, so given that the United States will see a new street course or temporary race course added to its history, in 2022. Obviously, I'm talking about the Miami GP there. I thought I'd dive into and share a brief history of one that captivated audiences for a brief time, beginning a little over a decade ago in the Mid-Atlantic region of the East Coast, the Baltimore Grand Prix. So the race was given the green light in 2010, and immediately the city of Baltimore went to work on street improvements. Immediately, though, the Grand Prix received negative reviews because downtown traffic was backed up and trees were removed during the process of roadwork. So off to a good start with reputation among the locals there in Baltimore. But you kind of would expect that, right? If you're getting a new GP, a new street course, you're probably going to see some of that done. But again, not everyone's, you can't please everybody. The inaugural Baltimore Grand Prix was 75 laps in length on a 2-mile street course. That was in Baltimore's Inner Harbor and encircled the convention center as well as Camden Yards, home of the Baltimore Orioles. It was officially a 12-turn street course with the start-finish line being located on Pratt Street on the circuit's north side, but the paddock in the pit straight were actually near Camden Station, near Camden Yards. So not that, most other street courses and race courses, the start-finish line is by the pits, by the paddock. Here, that was not the case. Very unique feature to this course. It was ran on Labor Day weekend on September 4th, 2011. Will Power won the race and gained 21 points. Points leader Dario Franchitti, who finished 4th. Oriol Servia and a Newman Haas Racing machine finished 2nd, and Tony Kanaan was 3rd. A total of 28 cars started this race. Sebastian Bourdais has the unfortunate title of finishing last in the race. He was out after 9 circuits with an electrical issue. Now, this race will be remembered for 2 near disastrous incidents. First, in the morning warm-up, Tony Kanaan lost his brakes approaching the first corner and collided with Helio Castroneves and essentially flew over the side of Helio. And, we talked about cars flying earlier. He flew into the turn 1 runoff area. Thankfully, it was first long enough. All right. And there's barriers there, tire barriers to slow him down. Both drivers walked away okay, unharmed, but they would race backup cars later in that day's race. Now, the second, and you can see it on IndyCar highlights, and I think the full race actually exists out there somewhere, the full broadcast. On the initial start of the race, in the first corner, a safety truck was not yet safely behind the wall, and Graham Rahal, who was passing pole sitter Will Power to the on the outside, drove in the same lane that this truck had just been traversing. Can you imagine how bad that could have been? I mean, you're talking a very serious incident that is, just going to end bad. So when I remember watching those highlights, I was like, holy cow. There's a reason TV didn't talk about this, probably. This is okay, let's just ignore that for a while. But yeah, that was those are the 2 most memorable moments out of this race's history. Probably are those 2 things, and one we all saw, we all know about, and the other one is kind of brushed underneath the rug. Following the 2011 race, however, Baltimore Racing Development lost the contract to promote the race after it failed to pay $1.5 million owed to the city, among an additional $12 million in debts. The race was quickly picked up by Race On and Andretti Sports Marketing, who, without a title sponsor, secured the 2012 date. The second edition was again ran on Labor Day weekend on September 2nd, 2012. This time, it was Captain America, Ryan Hunter-Reay, who won the race over Ryan Briscoe and Simon Pagenaud. Will Power exited this race with the points lead still in his hands, but it was a loss of points. RHR moved within 17, and after the next race at the season finale at Auto Club Speedway, Hunter-Reay did win the championship over Will Power by 3 points. So, crucial win for him that day. In 2013, the race was contested on September 1st, again on Labor Day weekend. Simon Pagenaud driving the 77 for Schmidt Hamilton Motorsports won the race. Joseph Newgarden driving the 67 for Sarah Fisher Hartman Racing secured 2nd. And Sebastian Bourdais in the 7 for Dragon Racing was 3rd. It was a good day. Lucky number 7s. Cleared the podium there. There was a big pileup twice that stopped the action in turn 1. Now, in the first edition of this race, teams were warned, hey, let's make it through the first corner. Let's take it careful because, as I'll mention here in a second, sports cars did race here, and they didn't do a good job of that first time out. And just a really bad corner. All right, very tight. You go back again, watch the highlights, watch the full race if you want. You will see turn 1 is very, very, very narrow, and it's just, a design flaw. And I might mention that again here in a second, so I apologize ahead of time. So sports cars did race there as well as did Indy Lights. They ran there all 3 years, and the sports cars did as well. LMP1, LMPC, GT, and GTC were there all 3 years, and LMP2 was added in 2012 and did race again in 2013. So scheduling conflicts ultimately led to this race not being held in 2014 or 2015, at least on Labor Day weekend for sure, because the Ohio State Navy game in 2014 was on Labor Day weekend, and then the American Legion had the convention center locked up for 2015. So again, you can't have a street course blocking the area during this time, especially when everything's happening there in the Inner Harbor. They try to land a deal where they'd race a different circuit, either around the Ravens Stadium or around the Orioles Stadium. Neither one worked out. Nothing could be brokered. So efforts were then tried for June or August 2014, but conflicts with other conventions and Orioles home game stands hampered these attempts. The race did have people supporting it and wanting it to continue. As you can imagine, the mayor did say she was behind it, but it just didn't happen. There were some business owners that didn't like it. You're never going to please everyone. Again, that should be the title of this featured racetrack, because it's just proof that you just can't please everyone, and we shouldn't try to. You just gotta get a majority, right? So the first race in 2011 saw 160,000 persons attend. Okay, that's as many as people who can attend Bristol Motor Speedway race when it's sold out. Then 131,000 in 2012, but then went back up to 152 in 2013 and brought in an estimated $130 million of economic impact between the 3 races. Now, the Grand Prix never made money itself, but it is reported and said that it would have made money in a few years. John Lopes, company president of Andretti Sports Marketing at the time, blamed the race's ultimate failure in 2014 on the city itself never embracing the series, and it felt like they were treated as outsiders. He also shouldered blame on the negativity coming from the first promoter's failure that was cast upon them when they took over the contract. Lopes also believed that the city or state, had they put more money into the actual race, a higher chance of long-term success could have happened. He did cite that that then upcoming race at NOLA Motorsports Park in Louisiana, that the state of Louisiana put in $4.5 million into that race. But that's a story for another day. So yes, IndyCar nor sports cars have returned to Baltimore and likely never will. As I mentioned before, this circuit is remembered for its 2 wow moments there that first year. Some crazy passing in the bottlenecks in turns 1 in the hairpin. I believe it's turn 4. So, and ultimately just a really poorly designed street circuit that was not good at all. So there you go. Baltimore Sun, Baltimore Fishbowl, Racing Reference, IndyCar, and ESPN helped with today's Rollers featured racetrack. With that said, let's go ahead and wrap this up here. What's in the windshield? Next weekend is a pair of 1.5 mile tracks in America. NASCAR will be at Kansas Speedway with the ARCA Menards Series and Camping World Truck Series racing on Saturday, May 1st, followed by the Cup Series. On Sunday, May 2nd, the NTT IndyCar Series has a doubleheader in Dallas-Fort Worth at Texas Motor Speedway. The Genesis 300, a 200-lap race, is on Saturday, May 1, followed by the XPEL 375, a 250-lap race on Sunday, May 1st. Formula One begins its May sprint of races in Southern Europe with the Portuguese Grand Prix on May 2nd at Portimao, followed by the Spanish Grand Prix on May 9th, and then Monaco Grand Prix on May 23rd. And yes, in case you forgot, the FIA decided that Racemess wasn't worth celebrating in 2021, and the grandest F1 Grand Prix of all will not take place the morning before the Indianapolis 500 and Coca-Cola 600. So, yeah, that's disappointing. Just thought I'd throw that reminder out there so we can all start to mentally prepare. And hey, this is Racing 2. The Kentucky Derby is this coming Saturday on May 1st. It's back to its traditional first Saturday in May date. Rob and I were both there in the IndyStar newsroom in 2019 when Maximum Security was disqualified and Country Horse was declared the winner. I never will forget that. That was a wow moment. I just blew my mind that happened, and I was so happy there to watch history, albeit from a computer screen. So with that being said, all right, thanks for listening. Thanks for spending 2 hours of your time with us, or if you time jumped, that's cool too. Just to listen to any part of this show, we appreciate it. Leave your feedback. Let us know what you think. Play along. Let us know your future paint scheme, as well as playing along with the upshift, downshift as well. Rob can be found at rpeters33. That's RPEETERS33. That's on Twitter. And also on Instagram too. If you want to follow him, he's pretty cool Instagram follow as well. And then I'm at roller_01. That's ROLLER_01 on Twitter. And the show at Robin Roller, just as it sounds, on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can also find us that way on YouTube. So thanks for listening. We appreciate it. Appreciate all your support, all the listeners we get. We love it. We love doing this for you. So for Rob Peters, I'm Josh Roller, and this was the Racing with Robin Roller podcast. Have a great weekend.